Hello, friends, and welcome back to Creatives on Camera. I'm your host, Lyric Montgomery Kinard, and today I have a guest who is not only an incredible quilt pattern designer and educator, but also a fierce advocate for creative entrepreneurs, fair pricing, and owning your own work. I'm thrilled to welcome Sam Hunter of Hunter's Design Studio. Sam is a quilt pattern designer, author, online educator, and podcast host with a no-nonsense approach to running a creative business. She's the founder of the Revolutionary Craft Business podcast, where she dives into the real challenges of the craft industry and shares practical advice for makers who want to build sustainable businesses. Sam is full of wisdom, wit, and straight up truth bombs, and she's not afraid to tell it like it is when it comes to the realities of making a living in the craft industry. Whether you're just starting out with video or looking to level up your online teaching, you are going to get so much value from this conversation. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's dive into an inspiring and empowering conversation with Sam Hunter. Hello, Sam. It is always such a delight and a pleasure to see you. Anytime I get to talk to you, it makes me happy. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Lyric. And likewise, I feel that we end up having these just wonderful conversations that I always feel so enriched by. Um, and yeah, good to see you today.
Yeah, hope you're doing well. Um, I am grateful that you have agreed to come on to this podcast where we talk to all kinds of creatives in all the creative arts who want to create video to teach online somehow, whether they do YouTube channels or online classes. And you have been around in that space for a long time, and it's been so much fun to watch the different avenues and the different platforms and the different ways you have gotten the amazing skills and patterns and education that you have to offer to your students. So why don't you give us a quick background of what you do and what you have to offer to your students?
Hunter's Design Studio is my pattern design business, and I started it, I was 14 years ago. Uh, and like everybody else, I've been, teaching at the local quilt store and teaching other people's patterns at the local quilt store, which, gives you a lot of insight into how you think a pattern should be written. Whenever we see new pattern designers and, they say, oh, what do I need to know about pattern design? I'm like, go make 20, 50 patterns from different makers and you'll find out what you like. And you'll find out, what kind of writing style you think is clear or works for you, or drawing style. Um, and then I wasn't really one much for video until we hit the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had at one point been under contract to Craftsy to do a video of my fabric dyeing workshop. And um, Craftsy had a new round of angel funding. And, when you take other people's money, you're beholden to what they want out of you. And what got cut was me, what I was teaching. They were going back to core classes at Craftsy, so my contract got dissolved. And I got paid out of my contract, actually. We were within a certain time, so I actually got paid out of the contract. This is the first time I bought an Apple computer. I had always been a Windows computer person, and when you change from one platform to the other, you have to change all your software, and it's kind of a financial load to go from one platform to the other. But getting paid out of my Craftsy contract actually afforded me all of those things. So yeah, in the pandemic, I started recording video, but it was just me. Like, we're all solo when we do it. And I would say that the hallmark of any of my videos is that they're pretty real and they're pretty shaggy. And I goof up and I keep on going. And if I sew it wrong, I rip in front of you and talk you through it. And I try to talk to people like they're standing next to me. I feel like I've never had and probably never will have this high level of studio polish that I know that I would achieve if somebody else was recording my stuff. But I'm actually happy with where I've landed in terms of just, being me and authentic
Right?
about it. Yeah.
That is such an important point,
Yeah.
because so many people who are thinking of getting into creating online education, and whether it's on-demand workshops or whatever, think that they have to be Hollywood level and they have to look gorgeous and they
Oh,
have
heck no.
to be all, but it's not about us at all, right?
No, it's
Why
not.
do your students still come to you? It's because they want the gift that you have to offer of
Yes.
the education. It's
Yeah.
not about us.
Yeah. I mean, I think their first interaction with us is because they desire the content that we offered. They've looked at all of their content offerings to them and they go, oh, wow, okay, well, Lyric's talking about it in a way that seems to make sense to me, so I'm going to go take Lyric's class. But you take Lyric's second class because you like how Lyric teaches,
Right.
right? And I think that letting our glorious selves out of the house is a really important way to create the connections that create community, which is how we navigate the sterility of the digital world, right?
Right. We're looking for authenticity.
Oh, and
And
connection.
you
Yeah,
can tell
yeah,
when, there's an act being put on, or especially in the age of AI, right? We
right.
want real
Yeah,
people, and having real live super imperfect,
yeah,
here's the way I stumble all over my words and I
yeah,
don't care.
yeah,
You know, that makes the authentic connection. It makes us real.
yeah. So yeah, all my first video education, which I did because I had been hired to teach at Quilters Affair at Sisters in Oregon,
Hmm.
Valerie Wells's gig. So that I had been hired to teach there, and then we had a pandemic, and they canceled the entire gig. Next year, they came back and said, "Hey, would you consider putting those classes together on video?" So I recorded them
Mm-hmm.
all, and they did it virtually. And then I took all of those recordings and I went through putting them on my own website. And after a couple of years of trying to manage the overhead of that, I chose to put them with C&T Creative Spark.
Let's talk through that process a little bit, because you have a WordPress website,
I do.
and hosting your own courses on your own website gives you all the control.
Yes,
But
and all the
it
profit.
also, what else
All
does it give you?
Well, it's all the control and all of the profit. If
Hmm.
they're spending $20 on something, I get all of the $20 less the bank fees. I'm not splitting that with an overhead corporation. But on WordPress, it took in installing LearnDash, which is a whole learning plugin. LearnDash requires a larger commitment of hosting. Like I had to go from shared, be underneath the hood. When you engage hosting services, you can be on a shared server or you can be on a virtual private server or your own private server. And I had to go to a virtual private server, so it cost me a lot more in my hosting. And then there was the LearnDash fees. All the plugins have fees. And can I just say, everything on WordPress went up 30% last year. Every single plugin went up 30%. What had been $100 is now 129. And then I also had to have Vimeo behind it because Vimeo was the video platform that was sitting underneath LearnDash. That had a yearly cost. And it was quite a lot of overhead. And I would say marketing my stuff is probably one of my weaker links.
Hmm.
I'm not known as much for video education. And so I was laying out all of this money and not doing the marketing work that would honor that expense.
Right.
And I am a C&T author. My book was published with them under the, I can never remember the imprint. It's the modern imprint. Anyway, Stash Books. Stash? Stash, I think, yes. Um, and so I have a great relationship with C&T, and they came out with Creative Spark. And unlike places like Craftsy, other learning platforms where you lose your rights to your videos, or getting out of your contract isn't as good, or your profit is based on actual watched minutes, uh, Creative Spark is very, very simple. They transferred my existing customers over. If I want off the platform, it takes 60 days. We split the profits and the
Right.
rights. I never lose my rights. And a lot of people, when Craftsy went belly up or went through its various different sales, kept losing rights at a level that made me extraordinarily cautious about who was going to get to own my stuff. And in the end, it was actually a blessing that Craftsy kicked me out of my contract, because now I have my hand dyeing video on Creative Spark, my way, my copyright, and no one can reuse that content without my permission.
Right.
And it can't be reused in, there's always a clause in the contract that's like an in perpetuity clause that says, we can use this any way we feel like it forever. And people would find their patterns in magazines they hadn't committed to, other people doing
Right.
the editing, and then you end up with the phone calls when something's not right. So yeah, it made better sense for me to go to Creative Spark in that
Yeah.
direction.
So Creative Spark is an online platform for, they have quilting classes and craft classes and
Yeah.
art classes. Just, it's a very, very broad variety of things. And it's not been around for very long. It's post-COVID.
Yes.
And they are one of the very few platforms that will host a bunch of different artist classes. There's Skillshare and Udemy and all different kinds, but they own your contract or content.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for an individual artist and creator to keep intellectual property rights under
Yeah.
your own umbrella. I learned the hard way too.
Yeah.
I had a book that I was extremely happy to have published, but then I had other ideas I wanted to go along with the book, and they had right of first refusal. Like basically anything that would compete with the book, I couldn't do.
Hmm.
And so I couldn't do them. And then
Yeah.
they did the same thing like Craftsy. Like they were
Hmm.
bought and bought and bought and bought. And I had a very difficult time getting the rights to my book back. I did
Yeah.
eventually, but if you start out owning your own things,
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want with them.
Yeah. And with the book publishers, I when I went into my publishing contract, I said I wasn't comfortable with CNT owning the rights to my book, and it was non-negotiable with them. And one of the points that they made, and I suppose if I sat in their chair with their hat on my head, I can see that that point was very valid, is that if they own the copyright, then they can defend the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas defending copyright is a lot larger of a job for a small business.
Oh, sure.
I've got a couple of people. I have actually trademarked Quilt Talk, which is the name of my book. Um, and I've had people use it on podcasts and YouTube channels and these things. And what a lot of people don't realize about trademarking is you can trademark a phrase or whatever, but if you don't defend it, if you don't go out of your way to defend it, when it comes time for renewal, they won't let you have it back. And I've got a couple of people who are using my trademark, and I've asked them to quit, and they've basically said, stuff it.
Come at me.
Yeah, prove it legally. To prove it legally would cost me about $1,000 for a
Mm-hmm.
trademark attorney to do their work. And so here am I potentially, and I think what surprises me is to have a colleague in the industry tell me to basically shove it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, aren't we all trying to help each other out here? Anyway,
Yeah.
but I have to prove that I've tried to defend it, and
Right.
it's a really big job for a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Well, I don't regret having my book
mhm,
with the publisher for
yeah,
the 2 years. It was after it when it was bought, the company was bought, it went out of print, and they weren't selling it anymore.
yeah,
But they still owned my
yeah,
intellectual property rights. So
yeah,
you as the artist, as the creator, need to figure out where that balance. I think the way that you've worked with Creative Spark is perfect
yeah,
because you keep your intellectual property rights,
yeah,
but they take over all the parts that you don't have time to or interest in doing, the
yeah,
marketing
yeah,
and the managing,
yeah,
and they're the ones who get the customer emails where they can't log in.
yeah. And I have found their customer service to be really, really excellent, and they get
Mm-hmm.
me involved when they need to. And I feel very supported by them when we are collectively trying to solve a customer's issue. I feel like we're both on the same page
Right.
about how important it is to be responsive to a customer and help them out as much as possible, which I like because that's part of what I'm trying to do as well. I mean, up to a point, we can't,
Yeah,
I
sure.
cannot be on the phone making the quilt with you. I just cannot. But, yeah. Um, And I also think when it does come to protecting one's rights, one of the things that's super important to understand is like some of this early craftsy stuff, we didn't see social media coming. We didn't see shorts, reels, video, uh, ways to turn our pattern into video content, class content. So when you've given up in perpetuity rights, you don't see what you could have given up because we
Right.
don't know where the evolution is going.
Right. Exactly. Craftsy approached me like in their very starting
Mm.
days, and I don't think I was even thinking about intellectual property rights in as much as I looked at the contract, and it was me being required to answer questions in perpetuity for as long as they were in business and that. And at the time, I was teaching online for another business,
Mhm.
and but my courses were time delimited. The time that I had to spend with the
Yeah,
students would last for 2 or 3 months at a time.
yeah.
And with my circumstances at the time, that
Hmm.
was all I could do. Right. So,
Yeah,
oh man, read contracts and realize that when you're signing a contract, you can negotiate everything,
absolutely. Every point is negotiable.
right? You can ask for
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah. I mean, a well-written contract protects all people.
Exactly.
Okay. And if people don't want to give you a contract, that says a lot about them. But read it, get smart people to read it with you. It's worth a couple $100 to have a contract lawyer take a look at it. I mean, truly, because you're going to leave money on the table if you don't know what you're doing, which I know I did with my first book contract.
Hmm.
Uh, and I just think that the contract delineates an agreement so that if you have to disagree, we've got a rule book for it.
Right.
And I think that's very, very important. And I think we're if the craft industry, which has been mostly most of us come into this because we were avid hobbyists.
Hmm.
We were committed hobbyists. And at some point we decided we'll give this business thing a go. And oftentimes you can bootstrap in. So you can get into being a purveyor in the craft industry with all the things you already have. Like you already have a sewing machine, you already have a computer, you already have a stash of yarn or fabric or whatever that is. So the entry is quite low.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's one of the
Which
beauties
means
of it.
that you keep trying not to spend or invest in this beginning of your business. Okay. So if we are going to go beyond this nice group of women that makes cool stuff that'll help you out and it's okay, we're nice women, we can do this on a handshake. If we're going to legitimize ourselves as business women, we need to embrace the contract.
Right? And investing in what you need. That's one of it. It is like a two-sided thing. I love that people can get into this business at a low level without having to find angel investors and things. Like
Yes.
you can start filming an online class with your phone,
Yeah,
right?
we all of the video that we do here, we do it all on iPhones.
Right? And it's enough. It
It's
is
enough.
absolutely enough. And they don't have to be Hollywood produced or any
No.
of that. But then also remember that you're a professional business person.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the Hollywood production idea, I mean, number one, you know, I'm a woman of that age, right? Because
We are not digital natives, no.
no. Uh, you know, am I svelte? No. Do I have gray hair? Yes. I like to say, the white is the truth and the rest is art in my hair. And uh I don't have barrel waves, artfully ripped jeans, and 2.4 golden retrievers. I don't have the look. But what I have is all of what I am, honestly. And I'm a little tired of social media really trying to market a perfection to me that is absolutely unattainable for anybody.
Right.
And it's exhausting me. I don't like how it makes me feel. I don't like how it makes me feel down about myself. And so I am feeling rabidly anti-perfectionistic in how I create what
Right.
I'm doing.
Well, that's another reason to do one of the things that you've done and work on YouTube instead of scrolling kind of social media. So
Yeah.
tell us what you do on YouTube and how it affects your business. Why are you on YouTube?
The very first YouTube video that I posted, a friend of mine, uh, was this before the pandemic? Yeah, it's all before the pandemic. A friend of mine said, "How do you baste a quilt over a table?" And I hauled the table outside and set up a camera and was like, "Hi, Kath, this is how I do it." And I posted it on YouTube so she had access to it. And then my next video a couple of years later was how do you baste a large quilt over a small table? And for the longest time, that was my YouTube video, like 6 years of it. And I have a virtual assistant who's much more technologically capable, savvy, interested. She loves a technological challenge where I'm just like, oh, for the love of God, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Um, Oftentimes she comes up with our video ideas and we'll just spend a day together. And it's like, how do you want me to do this? What do you want me to talk about? And then she gets the B-roll that she wants. She gets the angles that she wants.
Mhm.
Because the poor thing had to like edit all of my pandemic stuff, which was done by me in the way that I thought was right. And then she'd be like, well, didn't you get a photo of that? And I'm like, well, no, but I can't go back and get it now because I already assembled the quilt because I basically assembled it on camera, so I didn't have any backup. And I
Mhm.
didn't have the quilt in 17 different unfinished states.
Step
I just had the
outs. Yeah.
one. Um, so she has driven a lot of it. And then we started doing little videos for each pattern. Like, what do you need to know about this pattern? If you're going to buy this pattern, what do you need to know about it? And then we started doing little bits and pieces like how I get a 1/4 inch seam, how you sew strips without stretching them, little videos that went with a couple of patterns. I've got a couple of patterns that cut diagonal strips in a really specific way that's very easy, but it isn't always apparent by the way it's written.
It works better to just see
Works
it.
better to talk people through it. So those, and then she was the one that noticed that we were approaching the magic combination of watch hours and subscribers.
Hmm.
And then she started saying, we should do video about this, and we should do video about that, and we should do video about this, and let's try one of these. And one of the ones that she did is I still can't believe she got me to do this. She hauled me off to IKEA and turned a camera on me as I walked around IKEA talking about how I would use different things in IKEA in my studio and my creative practice.
Oh, how fun.
I know.
And
Yeah,
a
me and
nightmare. And
IKEA
how fun. And a nightmare.
and a nightmare. Well, when you don't have to get permission and there's a part of me is like, I am so not this, hi, I'm on camera at IKEA person. And I goofball. We tried to pronounce the words. I was happy when we found cookies
Hmm.
because that's what I am genuinely in IKEA. You hardly get out of there without cookies. Uh, and we ended up with one video that went viral.
Nice. Nice.
And when it went viral, it took us over the monetizing thresholds.
Very nice. And what do you think YouTube does for your business? What do you get out of the effort that you put into it, you and your assistant?
Uh, well, to start with, the passive income is wonderful because the passive income often pays her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Um,
should start actually working on my YouTube channel.
there's ways to do it, and I would
Hmm.
honestly tell people that I am honestly an accidental YouTuber. I
Hmm.
mean, there was no concerted, let me go take it. Like when I decided to do my podcast, I took Pat Flynn's podcasting course, which I thought was really valuable, and thought I would get some information before I go and launch this thing and then have to spend half my life researching how to do it, or have somebody else tell me where at least half the pitfalls were before I fell into them. YouTube, I've just kind of like muddled along. And Erin's had a lot more strategy than I have, my assistant, and I feel very, very accidental about it. And I wonder often if that's why it works. Because on some of these viral videos, some of the commentary that I got was, oh my gosh, you seem like a person that I could actually talk to. Could you give me a recommendation for a sewing machine? And so we went to our local sewing machine store and we shot an afternoon video there talking about how do you pick a sewing machine. So sometimes the questions create the content, but for someone to say, oh, you seem genuine and I really want to know more about you. I was recently at QuiltCon and I had a couple people come up to me and say, your voice is really distinctive. We love listening to you on YouTube and we love listening to your podcast because we love your voice. And we know that you're going to talk about interesting things when we hear your voice. So when we heard you over the curtains in the quilt show, we had to come around and find you.
Oh, sweet.
So it's like, this is very, very accidental. There's like no strategy in this at
Yeah,
all.
but
Well,
it's
other
getting
than
you.
Erin figuring things out and going, okay, we could be a little
She's
strategic about
strategic.
these.
She is
Yeah,
strategic. That's
yeah. I mean, I
fantastic.
certainly had no goal to become a YouTuber. But then when you start looking at what is accomplishable on YouTube, and here's just an example. My VA has a couple of boys that are in Cub Scouts. Actually, no, they're in Boy Scouts now. They're heading for Eagle Scouts. And one of them loves to watch a YouTube channel of this guy that goes camping in Alaska. He goes outdoor camping in Alaska. That's all of his videos are about this. And her son said to her, how much money do you think he makes on these videos? And so she looked at his watch numbers and went into the back end of my world and, did fancy math and came out. And what she ended up figuring out was that this video probably made this guy 100 grand.
Nice.
Okay, let's not leave that on the table, friends.
No, no. But also, and also, not but, and,
Yeah.
um, the recognition that you're getting on YouTube pulls people back into your paid content,
Yes.
right? Those people recognized and heard your voice, had a real relationship with you. And let's face it, people buy stories as
Yes.
much as they buy a product,
Yeah.
and they buy feelings and relationships
Yeah.
more than the thing.
Yeah.
And you've built that.
Uh-huh.
And then it turns around. I mean, even outside of the money you're making on YouTube itself,
Yeah.
it brings it back to your patterns and your book and the
Yeah.
other things that you offer.
Yes. Yeah. It makes me a trusted place for a thing.
Right.
They're like, oh, I need to make a quilt for a thing. Oh, I like Sam. Let me go see what she's got that could fit the brief, right?
Right.
Um, and that works also. And it's lovely that the monetization, your eyeballs on my YouTube channel, the advertisers actually pay for that. But like my podcast is launched on Substack, and at some point we're going to start putting my podcast content part paid and part not paid. So you're going to get some of it for free, and
Mm-hmm.
um, some of it will only be available to you if you subscribe to the podcast for just a few dollars. Like,
Right.
like the Patreon model, where a few dollars of your support enables us to make a lot more stuff for you. So that's really cool too. And I would say that I'm not old. I know people have a really hard time believing this about me. I can get really tied up and shy. I am not a naturally extroverted person. I have to put my face on and go out the door. And sometimes when I have over peopled, I get really awkward.
Mm.
And the awkwardness often appears in a very prickly demeanor. And all it is me being, I'm like over people
Done.
and having a shy moment. And I know that I was just all sorts of don't bother me, but that's exactly what, happens. So one of the things about video is it enables me to be me in the way that I can do it the best way. Um, I wouldn't do very well doing lives or like live ask me anythings or all of that kind of stuff because I would eventually overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
And when I overwhelm, I'm nobody's friend.
I love hearing this. I really love hearing this because
Yeah.
every person, every creator is unique in the way they deal with the world, and there is a way to make it work for
Yeah.
every one of us,
Yeah.
right? And I'm the opposite. I get wired. being with
Mhm.
people and just feed off the energy, and I get more and more and more. So lives put me the opposite. And there's room for both of this. I would love you to talk about why you started a podcast, because that's another form of education, even if it isn't
Mhm.
video.
Yeah.
Although, do you do video? Do you record video and put that up on your YouTube channel
Yeah.
with your
Well,
podcast?
yeah, the
Yeah,
entire pod is recorded in video. We do little
right.
snips. We do YouTube shorts of it. We do 1 minute reels of it, which are just really
Right, right.
promo things. At some point, we do want to release that content behind the paywall.
Mm,
We just haven't figured all the parts out yet.
right.
Because there's always new technological frontiers to get through. Um,
Yeah, that's one of the fun
so
things about technology we were talking about earlier. We couldn't have
yeah,
imagined
yeah, who
what
could have imagined?
we've got now.
And I know that I appreciate video interviews. And so my podcast is called Rev Craft Biz, or How to Own a Revolutionary Craft Business. 10, 12 years ago, Maddie Curtay, our wonderful badass quilter, she's the Badass Quilter Society. She
Go
gave me,
Maddie!
yep, there it is. She is wonderful. She had an event at a quilt market. I was in contract with C&T, which is how I remember the timing of it, on my book. I was in the shoot. I had not yet published, and I had a ranty moment at one point that had made me write a post on my website, which is still there. It's called "We Are So Worth It." And Maddie gave me the floor to talk about how women in business need to charge. We need to charge for the work we make. Women in craft need to charge. I mean, if you feel that you can't charge, at least give them the invoice for the full cost and show them the discount. Um, and I've always been a warrior for women in our industry to have better opportunities, to be better paid. And in the last dozen years, especially coming out of the pandemic and noticing my own burnout after the pandemic, that we get to run our businesses in a way that there's something of us left over.
Mm,
Because oftentimes, being a solopreneur, I mean, I have a tagline on my email that says, I am the chief everything officer. And I am. I do all the things. The things that I've had to learn to run a business just blow my mind. And so I'm really interested in how do we make a better industry in craft for women to thrive in. And I know how I feel about it, but I also know that I can get like really stuffed up one way thinking about doing things. It's like Sam thinks it should go this way. And then I end up feeling very black and white about it. But when I start talking to my colleagues, I see all the shades of gray. And I wanted to write a book knowing that I needed to experience all these shades of gray. I can't say I loved writing the book that I've written. I love my book, but the process was a little eye-opening, and candidly, the profits aren't as strong.
mm,
You can self-publish, again, you can self-publish and get more of the money, or you can leave it to a publishing house that carries some of the lifting for you and you get a lot less of the money. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go through that process again in a way where I felt that my ability to have final say in how my product looked was given over to other people.
right.
Now, not again, C&T made my book beautiful. It was more beautiful than I could ever have imagined. But I wasn't sure I wanted to go through that process again, and I knew I needed to have the conversations. And it was like, well, what if I have the conversations on a podcast? I love having conversations with my business friends. I mean, you and I have had so many of them, Lyric.
Right.
So I started recording these, and I am as happy as a pig in mud doing this.
Perfect
Absolutely
for you.
perfect. I love having the conversations. We talk about business, we talk about business structure, we talk about how do you get to the creative process.
Hmm.
I've talked to people who have very, very creative businesses. Like I got to talk to Jenny Robinson, who made the QuiltCon winner last year, the Best of Show last year.
Oh, nice.
Um, I recently talked to Laura Shaw, whose quilt got censored out of AQS shows.
Mm,
The censorship turned into a huge wonderful thing. She got collected by a museum. She came and talked to me about the process of making the quilt and how she feels about these things that affect us in our industry.
right.
So it is primarily aimed at business people, But here's the thing. Someone said to me, oh, it's too small a niche. You're just trying to talk to business people in quilting. But here's the thing. I think that our customers really want to know what goes on behind the green curtain.
right?
They want to know what makes us tick. In today's age, we're making far more purchasing decisions about, are these people in a similar lane to us philosophically, politically, in terms of how we experience our faith? And so I think the podcasts do, in my case, do go beyond just my biz pals.
Right?
Okay. That's what I was hearing at QuiltCon is regular folk are enjoying finding out about what goes on behind, well, in my case, it's an orange curtain here at Huntington Design Studio because that's my favorite color.
I know so many people, and this is all my kids and I are so deep in this hole of we want to know all the things behind, like how a movie is made.
Yeah,
Like, I am so much more interested in the behind the scenes things most often than the movie itself, right? But
absolutely.
when it's part of the story, when
Yeah.
our customers, when our audience, when the people we serve understand all of the things around it, it makes it a deeper and richer experience for them.
I think so. And also, again, because a lot of us have come into this as hobbyists, a lot of these businesses have been built in the hobbyist lane. We were giving a lot of stuff away for free,
Right,
which we shouldn't have been. Um, I think that some of these conversations in a public arena are letting our purchasing public know that we are deeply committed to creating what we create. And that, in turn, requires compensation.
right,
Their expectation of us being hobbyists who have some other kind of income behind them, like women making pin money, and that we just dabble in it, and because we like making art, we should just give it away. I'm trying to cut through all of that as well in the consumer's perception of what we're up to. We have significant investments in what we're doing. I mean, you and I, before we even got recording today, we were comparing microphones and headphones and camera equipment and all of the things that make even creating my somewhat shaggy podcast at least sound decent,
right.
right?
Absolutely. There is, and it's not only the investment financially in all the things around it, but you and I were talking about the balance of leaving ourselves some peace, right? We
Yes.
put so
Mhm.
much effort and so much heart and so much soul and time, so much time
Time.
into creating
Mhm.
these things that,
Yeah.
you know, we're not the highest paid industry.
No.
We should absolutely charge what we're worth. And where was I going with this? At the same time, we serve our
Yes.
people,
Mhm.
right? We do this thing in this industry because we love what we do and we want the people we serve to have better, happier, more creative lives.
Yes.
Otherwise we'd go off and be bankers.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, one person who was a little frustrated with the the hiccups in technology that made getting a download really hard, at one point said to me in an email, you're just trying to screw me over. And, I really wanted to say to her, man, if I was going to screw you over, I'd be going for more than $13. I mean, I'd be coming for your retirement accounts at this point. Um, I think, God, you said something there and I hooked onto it and poof, it derailed.
Serving our people, doing
Serving
what we love
people.
because we want them to be
Yeah,
better and happier and more
yeah,
creative.
there it was. One of my beloved professors, Frank Sardisco, he is now no longer with us. He was a drawing professor. He used to always say, "We are the people that make the world beautiful enough to live in." And he felt that that was a calling and a responsibility. And I feel like people could look at our business, so you just make quilt patterns, and quilt patterns are just like what? But we are holding in that quilt pattern or in our video education of how to make a quilt we are holding someone's investment. We are holding someone's time. I mean, you can make more money, but it's really hard to make more time. And we are holding their enjoyment of their artistic voice in our hands. And I don't think any of us take that casually at all.
Absolutely. That's what a teacher's heart is all about,
Yeah.
right? We all create the things that we love to do,
Mhm.
and we love it so much that we want other people to love it.
Yeah.
And especially in times when the world is falling apart and when life is difficult for other people, sometimes we look at our creative hobbies or the art that we create as unimportant and as frivolous. And there's so many dire things
Mhm.
that need attention. And at the same time, I mean, the example that comes to my mind is, do you remember the cellist of Sarajevo during the Civil War when there were snipers out on the street shooting everyday people all the time? There was an artist, a musician, who would risk his life, go sit in the open, wide open, and he would play his music. And he was, I don't remember what piece it was, but he would play something for every person shot. And that image
Mhm.
sticks with us.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most famous wartime images is Guernica, right?
Yes.
And art can speak when other things can't.
Cannot. Yes.
And
The language.
even if it's just a hobby,
Yeah.
even if you're just knitting socks, right? That is a moment of peace
Yeah.
and joy and bringing something good
Yeah.
into the world that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And we as teachers, we know how to do that ourselves,
Yeah.
but we are amplifying that peace and that joy exponentially when we teach it to others, when we share the skill and the joy. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's frivolous. I think it's vital.
Vital. Absolutely. And we're in part facilitators for other people to love on their people. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've bought a lot of quilt patterns that I haven't actually made, but just say that 20% of our patterns actually turn into physical products. And you look at the numbers of things that you sold and you go, well, there's a few thousand people out there that have a fabric hug wrapped around them because somebody bought my pattern.
Right?
And what
Or
could
a knit baby cap
a
or a
bit, a beanie
crocheted
or some socks
shawl
or
or just the things of
yeah,
our hands
the things of our hands.
that we make
Yeah,
are, again, they're things that make the world a better place. They just
exactly.
do.
Exactly. And if you look at every time there's a natural disaster, I sent a box of quilts off to help some of the people that lost their homes in the Southern California fires recently. Uh, I sent I sent food and quilts to the Carolinas after the hurricane
Hmm.
because that's what I could do. It's like, like, I don't have $1 million to put in a kitty for something like that, but I can quilt.
Yeah. You
Okay?
know, it's the soft crafts especially
Yeah.
is such a giving community.
Hmm.
You know, the in the arts and all the different places, people do a lot of things, but
Yeah.
it feels like in the soft crafts,
Hmm.
it's a nurturing and giving environment.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. I have never been to a quilt guild in my traveling in the last, what, 18 years that wasn't doing some sort of community work,
Yeah.
right? And that happens all over the place. So, teachers, yay!
Yeah.
Business people in our industry, yay!
Yay.
We are amplifying, we are making, it's good to make money. I mean, we need to be supported
Oh,
in
yeah. I
what
mean,
we do, but we are
nothing's better
doing
than having it
something
all.
real,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It almost
Exactly.
feels more real sometimes than things like the stock market and things that, might
Yeah.
make money, but are they actually making the world a better place? So good for us.
Good for
Yay! Let's give ourselves, all of you out there listening, give yourself a pat on the
pat on
back.
the back.
You
Yeah.
are amazing.
Yeah.
Sam, this has been delightful and amazing. And let's wrap up with some fun questions that can be entirely off topic if you want to.
Sure, bring it.
What's the last thing you made?
Breakfast.
What was it? Was it
Breakfast.
good?
No, actually, the last thing I made was a cup of something called mud water. So it's like chocolate and reishi mushrooms, and that was a sort of a chewy cup of hot drink this morning. I got up early
Nice.
because I was running a Zoom call for a bunch of colleagues where we co-worked together. So that was the last thing I
Nice.
made. The last physical thing I sewed on yesterday, I was at my guild's charity sewing event day. One of our local stores sponsors us. You just show up. My
Hmm.
friend Kath Hall, absolutely queen of how to do this. She comes with a project idea. The machines are there. You sit down, you sew a couple blocks. And I did some paper piece trees
Sweet.
for this quilt. That was the last thing I stitched on.
Something easy, something
Paper piece
simple and
tree.
put together. What is one item on your bucket list? I'm not going to say which bucket list or for what. Go crazy.
Bucket list. I run retreats in Europe,
You
currently in
do.
France and London. I would love to add another country to that. I thought it might be Italy, but I'm not finding my helpers. Shout out to Mr. Rogers. Always look for your helpers. But I think I might have found a helper to help me develop something in Ireland.
Oh, amazing. All right, universe, the world is out there. Sam needs her helper to go
I
to
need my
Italy
helper
and
in
or
Ireland to help
Ireland.
me bring a textile tour to Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard such amazing good things about
Mhm.
your tours. So look those up. Sam, where can we find you?
Hunter's Design with an S in the middle. Hunter's Design Studio. If you can't remember that mouthful, just literally type into Google Sam Hunter Quilt and you'll get it. Embroidered Journey is the tours. RevCraftBiz.com is the podcast.
It's a fantastic podcast too, all of those.
Oh, and Instagram, Hunter's DS. I figured Hunter's Design Studio. Just too many things to type. So Hunter SDS.
All right. All right, friends, go look up Sam and support her business. And all of you, you know, keep doing what you're doing. Keep
Yeah.
moving forward. Take the next step. It doesn't have to be a huge step. Take a baby step, the first tiny action in the direction that you want to go,
Absolutely.
because what you're doing is important and you
It
make the world a
is.
better place.
We're making the world a more beautiful place to live in.
All right. Thanks, Sam.